Hi everyone, here we are again. I want to talk about chronic fatigue syndrome and depression, and the fact that chronic fatigue syndrome is not depression, and Tilly has decided to join me today on this. Yes, it's in the past, and probably maybe it still happens. The doctors have confused, off she goes, doctors have confused chronic fatigue syndrome with depression, and sometimes people have been diagnosed with depression when they should have been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. It's kind of understandable because a lot of the symptoms do cross over. And, the question has been asked, of me too. But I think, how do we tell the difference? Is depression causing the sort of chronic fatigue similar symptoms? Because depression, yes, does cause fatigue and, a lot of other symptoms, headaches, brain fog, etc. And of course, also, one of the symptoms of chronic fatigue is depression. How do how do you know what the difference is? And she's very vocal. And I think if you've not had any previous issue with clinical depression, I think then it's more likely that your symptoms are chronic fatigue syndrome. However, if you have had a history of diagnosed depression, then it's possible that depression has caused the chronic fatigue symptoms. So that's where it gets a bit shadowy. And by the way, I'm not a medical expert, but I've had chronic fatigue syndrome since about 2001. So, these are a lot of things that I've researched and looked into. But, I do have to say that I'm not a medical expert, but these are the things I've seen. I always knew that I could definitely feel that my symptoms, when I felt depressed, I always knew that it was through the chronic fatigue, if you see what I mean. There was a kind of instinct. I knew that my chronic fatigue symptoms were not being caused by depression. My depression was being caused by the chronic fatigue syndrome. And I think probably most of us who do actually have chronic fatigue syndrome can sense that. I wasn't depressed before. But obviously, and I think this difficulty of diagnosing which one it is has caused quite a lot of anger, with people who do have genuinely chronic fatigue syndrome and are being diagnosed with depression. And of course, the danger is that if doctors are giving you antidepressants, I'm not going to say that doctors shouldn't do that. There might be other reasons why doctors give out antidepressants, but I do not believe that antidepressants are in any way beneficial for chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, don't take my word for that. Go away and research it yourself. But I would never take antidepressants for chronic fatigue syndrome. I just don't think it helps. I think actually in the long term, it will possibly even keep you locked into the chronic fatigue syndrome. But again, I'm going to really reiterate, I'm not a medical expert. But these are things that you can go away and research for yourself. Talk to your doctor, talk to other health experts and see what you think. But basically, my belief is that you can probably know instinctively whether you're, if you have depression, whether it's the main cause of your chronic fatigue syndrome, or whether your depression is a symptom of chronic fatigue syndrome. And, you know, whichever one that is, then you need to act accordingly. And I would suggest, if you have depression, to actually consult psychotherapy rather than go on antidepressants. But again, you know, that's just my feeling, and you need to consult that with proper health professionals. Tricky subject. So, you know, I'm not going to come down with any definite answers, because, you know, I could get into trouble doing that. But these are my feelings. So work it out for yourself, do the research, and make sure that you know which one it is, whether you have depression that causes fatigue, or whether you have chronic fatigue that causes depression. I'd like to hear any of your comments on this. It's an interesting subject, so do ask any questions, and I'll see if I can attempt to answer them. Okay, see you again soon. Bye for now.